So I find myself back in New Orleans at the Fontainebleau storage building.
Storage facility.
Yeah, man. And I'm here at Hightower Recording Studios in New Orleans.
Yeah.
James, thanks for having me, man.
Oh, man, thanks for coming by.
Like I told you before, man, whenever I found out like who was recording, producing some of the best records to come out of New Orleans in the last, 10, 15 years you've been doing this?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it kind of longer than that, but I've been back in New Orleans. I did a stint in California, living out there for like 6, 7, maybe 8 years almost. And yeah, I've been back since like 2012. I grew up here.
Okay.
And yeah, I've been back since 2012. So yeah, it's 11 years.
That's wild.
I've had this place, like this proper, I guess, Hightower for, I think it's going on 8 years now.
Wow.
Maybe almost 9.
So for those who don't know you or don't know your work, who are some of the bands that you have worked with in these past 8 years here in New Orleans?
Okay, yeah, I mean, there's a lot, I guess. I mean, probably the one I've worked with the most, and most people kind of associate a lot of my stuff with is Thou. I've been doing a lot of their records since even before I was in New Orleans. When I lived in Oakland, I was doing a lot of their stuff, and I was flying in to do the records, and then they came out to my apartment out in Oakland. We recorded the fourplex.
Wow.
A couple of some of the earlier stuff they did. I guess EYEHATEGOD.
Yeah.
I've had High on Fire in here, which is kind of crazy.
That's crazy.
I know. Yeah. Emma Ruth Rundle, which is also crazy. Special Interest.
Yeah.
It's just, the list goes on. It's really hard to
It's overwhelming to me
because I work on and I do a lot of stuff, so it's also kind of like I have to like look at when people ask me stuff like that. So I go look at my hard drives and look at the lists of bands on them or my Dropbox files.
I mean, I would say, and just in my opinion, like you were definitely on the short list of guys I would love to work with if I had to like put together a little musical project and say, hey,
that's crazy.
Put the trust in your hands and your capable ears, because you get a sound on your recordings that it's loud, it's abrasive, but yet polished, but not. It's just the best type of recording, and like to be here in the recording studio with you, man. It's truly an honor for me. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I just kind of make things feel how I want them, and I find that that's also like it's kind of weird, because I do find that sometimes I'll like mix something for people after we've recorded it, and I mix it, and I'm like, oh, this sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And then they get it, and it's like, it's cool. It doesn't sound like us at all. And I find so I definitely like have like I don't think I have a sound maybe, but I definitely have like a thing where like I want the band to sound like themselves, but I want it to be in like the most, the best light possible.
Yeah.
That's like a thing, where
right.
And a lot of bands, and I have to understand, and it's another conversation you have with bands where it's like, do you want your record to be like, what I consider like a record where we're going to make every song to its absolute fullest. We're no holds bar with the time, whatever time allows. We're gonna put whatever we can to this.
Yeah.
Or there's also the kind of band which is just as valid to make a record where we're just trying to basically like kind of like make a representation of what we sound like in a room, playing in front of people or playing in our practice space or wherever. And so it's kind of you have to have that conversation early on, because there's two different aspects of trying to make those kinds of records.
Well, let's talk about how you grew up, and talk about like what happened in your young adult life to made you want to go, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to record. I want to be able to mix.
Let's see. I mean, I guess the first time I remember really thinking about any of it was, I guess I'd been early high school. I was in like a band. Yeah, we were like 16 years old. A band called Ginger Quail. We used to play. Luckily we like got to like play some like pretty big shows around here for club punk bands or whatever, But like, just I guess like with that, like basically just like we had to record. We had no idea like how to. We called. I don't remember if we even called studios, but I remember at the time being like, we can't afford that.
Yeah.
And so it's like one of these things where like, oh, like I think it was like Robert, like, oh, you got like some money for Christmas. It's got a 4-track. And we just kind of like, I remember like the very first recording we did, his, the other guy in the band, Robert, guitar player, his dad had like the small warehouse in the West Bank that was like a plumbing supply warehouse. And I remember we spent like a weekend recording there where like, wasn't even the 4-track, just a mixer and then like record it to the tape and then like take one tape, put it through the mixer, record new tracks over onto the next tape, go back and forth. And then eventually from that, we got like a 4-track. And we're like, because this is so much easier. And then from, and it kind of progressed from there. Eventually got into like having like, me and another guy named Greg Stein back in, this is like 96, 97 or whatever. Like we kind of had like, I remember our like roving like guitar, our roving studio, which is basically, if I remember correctly, like an 8-ad, a small mixer and like a tub full of microphones and stands and blankets kind of thing, and just did stuff like that. And then, after that, wanted to like get into doing actual studio stuff, like really like basically realized that I kind of enjoy doing that more than like actually being on stage. Yeah. And so then went, what'd I do? Let's see. So then basically was doing all that stuff, called around and tried to find like an internship at studios, and I wound up at Festival in Kenner. As basically an intern. And basically within the first couple of like, I was there for maybe a couple of months, but like first couple of weeks of being there, they had like this thing where cash money was coming in every a few weeks or something. And so like, and through that, I remember like actually like getting to work on like, we were like recording hip hop, like, but this is like stuff you would like later sort of hear some of it on the radio. This is kind of early. So it was like, the only thing I remember recording was like Project Chick. Was like the only like big national hit, and then most of it was like for like I think Turks, Young and Thug and everything. Oh yeah, but I was just like an assistant, like but basically like the engineers kind of like just didn't like dealing with how loud it was all the time, because it really was. It was like they'd make a beat and then play it super loud for like 2 hours while dudes wrote, and dude was just like, I don't want to deal with this, and I gotta like stop the tape machine and like do it if I needed to. So I kind of like wound up like doing stuff like that. And I remember like doing some of that stuff, being like, oh man, this is pretty awesome. And then like from there, like basically. Again, fortunate enough, I know like my mom had like some thing where like when I was a kid, put money away in some fund. Yeah. And then some thing where like, okay, you're in like, she knew I was into recording one. I think I was at UNO, but I was like pretty much just going there and like playing Mega Touch in the Cove, like, just like, I don't know. Yeah. I went to class a little bit, but not really. Right. And then, basically I went to Full Sail out in Florida, which is like a recording school, and it's super expensive, but luckily my mom had that kind of thing set away. And so I kind of got to go there without really taking on any debt, which is also kind of crazy because most people who go there usually. And it was kind of crazy. I went there, and it was after doing all the cash money stuff. Yeah. And not all of it, like, but like working with them a little bit.
So you had some experience going into Full Sail.
Yeah. And so I got there, and it was kind of, and I'd also like, it's also like the beginning of like the internet age where like I remember like finding like, like forums where I could like find like just engineers were writing about all the stuff. So that was the beginning of like information just being everywhere, and you didn't have to have like find the guy who knew it at the studio locally. Luckily, I had some of that at the festival. Like those dudes. But it was cool. Like recorded hip hop to like a 2-inch tape machine. That's just what it was. Right. Like, they didn't have, it wasn't Pro Tools yet. I mean, Pro Tools was around, but it wasn't like really
excessive.
It wasn't accessible, especially around New Orleans, as far as I know. I only knew one person one studio that sort of had a Pro Tools rig then, and I'm not even sure if that's even completely accurate. Wow. But so got into doing that. Went out to Full Sail, did that whole program, finished that, and wound up the kind of the coolest thing that came out of that was I got to intern at and do a little bit of assisting at Transcon Studios, which is like Lou Pearlman, who did Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all that stuff. So that was like a big facility. That was like, multiple SSLs in rooms, multiple rooms, proper facility.
Now, for those who don't know what a SSL is.
Yeah. So that's like, especially at that time, at that point in time, like 2000, that was, if you had an SSL, that was end all be all of mixing consoles in the studio for like, oh shit. And we had like a 9000J, I believe. Damn. Pretty sure it was a 9000J. That was like, that at the time was.
Sounds really expensive.
I'm sure. I don't even know. I mean, I don't want to throw numbers out there. I mean, I know nowadays you can get them for a fraction of what they cost, but I think some of those consoles were upwards of like $1 million or close to it. I don't really know if that's an accurate number. I know definitely hundreds of thousands. Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely. So, and I got to like do a little bit of work. I was never like really engineering there. It was all assisting and interning there. So it's like, I got to do a little bit of stuff, but it's pretty much hanging out and doing like kind of like studio grunt work. And did a lot of like rehearsals. We did like rehearsals with people and stuff like that who they were like artists they were developing. So did that stuff. Kind of like wasn't into the. I don't know. I kind of wasn't into Florida, to be honest. I was living in Orlando still. I was all in Orlando. I have to wholesale where that is. Just wasn't really into Florida. Yeah. Totally. And so moved back to New Orleans. And basically just like came here and like tried to like get into some studio stuff, but like in all reality, like just it didn't really pay. It was, I could have gotten a couple jobs, but like being a guy just showed up trying to engineer, like they weren't paying anybody to do that, and there wasn't a ton of work in the bigger studios, I think, to, for them to hire new people. So I wanted to get into corporate AV and doing live stuff for years. And then slowly, like back in the day, like this is pre-Katrina, started doing that and started building like what I think is like the kind of first like sort of real studio situation that I probably had, which was uptown. I had like kind of like a house that I basically rented. It was like a 4 or 5 bedroom house that was like an old orphanage or something. That we rented. Yeah. And so I had my bedroom, and then I rented a separate room for the studio, and then like the living room had like these big like, I don't know, like about like 15-foot vaulted ceilings in the living room, so I could record drums there. And basically,
I bet drums sound really good in there.
Who knows? I didn't know how to record back then.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I thought I did. I did a couple of records there, mostly like I guess the most notable ones were like I did the band I was in, the Ghostwood. I remember that one. Did a band, Dirty Dingus, was in the old house, and I remember that like sounding really cool. That got lost in Katrina stuff, like bad hard drives, and like we lost vocals and like whole parts of stuff. But like, and that was like the first time I actually bought a console. I even had like a tape machine, like a 1-inch 16 track for a minute. And then Katrina hit, and pretty much it was like, New Orleans was pretty much like, it was complete uncertainty.
Yeah.
No one knew what was going on. So I basically just wound up the place. I was actually had a job doing corporate audio at a place called AVW Tel, which is Freeman. I don't know. They're like gigantic corporate AV/shipping/everything decorating company. Yeah. Anyway, so they kind of gave me some options to move away, and I was like, nah, this places are terrible. I don't want to go there. And then I was dating someone at the time. We were together for a couple years, and she worked at Whole Foods, and Whole Foods pretty much like gave her like a sum of money. I was like, hey, here's some money. Just show up at pretty much any Whole Foods in the next month or so. They'll have a job for you.
Oh, wow.
At least that's how it was kind of put to us. I don't know if that was everyone's situation at Whole Foods there. At the working the Arabella one, I think, uptown, whatever it was. And so wound up like, oh well, shit. Let's go to the Bay Area. That's always like I've done a little bit of touring.
So that's interesting. You go into the Bay Area. I wanted to go to
the Bay Area because it was like the nicest weather. To be completely honest, like I was like, oh, it's the nicest weather. I just want to go out there. And so I wound up moving to Oakland. Wound up moving out there with Brian Funk, the vocalist from Bow. Jonathan West, who was like the guitar player and singer in my band Ghostwood, and also a couple other local bands. And another friend of ours, Darren Acosta, the guy who does the Norco game. Okay. So a friend of ours, we all kind of like wound up moving into this like fourplex. We had 2 apartments in this fourplex and moved out to Oakland and like just sort of like wound up being out there. And after the next couple of years, like everyone kind of moved back and I was like the only one who really stayed out there. And I wound up being out there for about 6-7 years.
That's wild, man.
Man, I loved living out there, and it was like kind of the only reason why I really moved. I moved to LA to work on a record and kind of like work with us band Streetlight Manifesto, ska band. And so like that's and then after that we finished the record, finished like kind of doing it, and I didn't really jive with LA too much. It just wasn't like my kind of place. So wound up moving back to New Orleans, and that's kind of when I guess realistically.
Now, while you was living out in the Bay Area and Oakland and all that, I mean, I'm sure you got exposed to like that, like where I guess where Matt Pike had his like all the metal. Scene.
So the thing is I move out there, and within being out there for like maybe 9 months to a year, I started touring with bands. Okay. I was never home. I mean, there was there was a couple of years where I was home like 20, 30 days the whole year. Mm-hmm. I was just never home. And then like some of those days I was home was like, oh, we played San Francisco, so I had to go home and shower and sleep in my bed till 4 a.m. and then take the first BART back into the city to get on a bus and leave. Yeah. So it was like, or van or whatever, bus or van, depending on which bands. and so that was kind of like I was literally never home out there. So I mean, literally, like, I got to see some cool shows, some really awesome shows, and met some people. But I mean, like, like Matt Pike, I only ever remember like seeing dude. Like, I mean, I saw them play maybe once out there. They played in Oakland at this club that was down the street from me. But other than that, I would see him eating breakfast. And Mama's Royal, I think, was the name of the spot. On like Sundays or Saturdays or something. I'd just go there for breakfast sometimes, and he'd be there kind of often. So like that's what I remember.
That's wild, man.
But I mean, but I definitely got to like go to cool shows like Gilman and Burnt Ramen, and there was like kind of a cool like warehouse scene is like 2000 into 2005, 2006, 2007. So there's like a cool warehouse metal scene. Like there's all these warehouses doing shows and stuff. So that it was definitely cool to be out there at that time and just to see. It's just. I think being from New Orleans, I think I always thought this was a really big city, and then you go somewhere, and you're like, oh no,
yeah,
this is a big city.
Yeah, it just
like in that area,
it opens your mind. Like, dude, there's a lot more people doing this. What I'm into, or what we're into.
100%. 100%.
Where like it's it's just like maybe like a small percentage of us doing it here in New Orleans.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's like, well, I mean, it's probably the same percentage.
But
it's just the fact
bigger capita.
Right out there, yeah. I mean, you look within one area, you've got San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, all major cities.
Yeah.
All much bigger than New Orleans itself.
Right.
It's kind of like, so like they're all, and so when that happens, there's just a lot more stuff going on. I got exposed to a lot more weird stuff,
I'm sure. There's plenty weird in California.
Cool.
I lived there for a couple of years myself.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I was further south in San Diego.
Okay, yeah.
But I know all about the weirdom. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I loved living out there. It was super cool. I mainly the weather. I find weather affects me the most. That's my biggest issue with living
Same here. Yeah.
Down here is that like when I wake up and walk out the front door, it's like, oh, this feels like shit. Like
it's like every day.
I'm not. And it means I have to come to the studio and it takes me an extra hour to get in the mood to want to mix something or just work.
Yeah.
And whereas like out there, it'd be like, I remember like it just feels great. I go outside and hang out for 30 minutes and feel rejuvenated, and then just like walk back inside, have another 5 hours in me, even after I'd worked for 10 hours on something. Like, it was, it's definitely different, but I'm also just getting older. It's also, I was like 25, 26, 27 when I lived out there. So that's like,
Oh, so we're practically the same age then.
I'm 42.
I'm 42 as well.
Born November 20th, 1980.
Okay. I was February. I turned 43 this month.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Happy almost birthday, man.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
So it's just like that's that's definitely the impetus for me being in California and staying out there as long as I did. And then moving back to New Orleans and just sort of and at the same time when I was living out there, I was like coming back pretty often. Like I was recording almost all the Vow stuff still at that point. We were doing it at a place called the Living Room. Out in the West Bank, a big friend of ours, Chris George's studio in the West Bank.
Okay.
Did a lot of it there. Did a couple things where like I flew with a couple racks and some like Pelican cases of gear that I had out in California and like record them in like practice spaces and stuff like that, and other bands as well, in those times. And then I did a couple bands out in California, but not nearly as much because I was pretty much touring or out of town a lot.
I got to ask you, did you ever cross paths with Billy Anderson?
No, never. Like, no, not really. I mean, I know who he is. He's a killer
producer,
engineer. Yeah. As far as I know, the only dude who's engineered a record produced by Kurt Cobain, which is insane.
That's insane.
Melvin's Houdini.
Yep.
Yeah. A wild, like little asterisk next to your name.
Yeah, that's just some wild shit. I had to ask because I mean,
like I said, like I was never around, so like I never got into the studio scene out there. Like the closest thing I did to like I met some dudes who through Craigslist, like buying and selling gear, who I didn't realize who they were till years later.
Wow,
who have like been involved in stuff and things like that. And there's that's pretty much it. I wasn't really in that scene. Everything's been kind of like my own self-taught thing ever since like I'm in the last real studio I properly I take this back. I did do some like engineering for like a producer guy who kind of like I hooked up with out there who was doing like adult contemporary stuff, and I was just going to this place called Hyde Street Studios, which was like a really nice studio still out there in San Francisco.
Isn't that the same spot that Deaf Heaven recorded? Hyde Street? I don't know. I could be.
I don't know for sure.
I could be giving false information. I mean,
it's a cool studio in San Francisco. I know that they did like the things that I was like in Green Day's Insomniac and like the Digital Underground. Sex Packets.
Oh, dude, that's a great record, dude.
So doing corporate audio, one of my like a dude who's like kind of like like my project manager, boss guy, audio. He was a recording engineer, but he's the engineer who did a lot of that stuff at Hyde Street.
That's insane.
And find like years later we're working and just like, oh, we're talking. He's like, oh, I worked at Hyde Street. Oh, I worked at Hyde Street. And I was like, oh, dude, I remember. And I told him the story. I was like, I remember walking in there and like the records on this like Insomniac and there's a bunch of other like classic rock records, but the things I was into were Sex Packets and Insomniac. And he was like, oh yeah, I worked on Sex Packets. I think I did a little bit on Insomniac too,
dude.
And then so he was like, but he was like lived in San Francisco and was like doing the engineer thing, working in all the studios kind of thing. Back in whenever that was, I don't even know the years of that. But yeah. So it's kind of crazy how that kind of went full circle.
As you're talking about Digital Underground and Sex Packets, I just hear the Humpty Dance like on loop in my end, and that bass track, that
no, it's definitely, it's like that was but yeah, it's kind of that was kind of, but I didn't work there a lot. It was literally like. Maybe like a dozen days over the course of a few months, kind of thing. So not even that was the only like real studio I worked out there when I was living out there. Mm-hmm. And then just wound up back in New Orleans.
So was that a matter of you getting like kind of homesick or just like situation dictated?
Just basically, realistically, you basically was kind of done with the Streetlight record and stuff and working on it. Wasn't really into like my situation living there. Like I just went into LA. Just wasn't like a real I was at a point in time where like I had just moved from Oakland to LA just to do that and kind of like gotten rid of a bunch of stuff, so literally could fit all my stuff in like a minivan.
How was LA?
For me it was fine. When I was there and had stuff to do, it was great. If you want to go see concerts, every concert in the world ever happens there.
Yeah.
Anything you'd ever possibly want to do in the world is there.
Right.
I was lucky enough to I was kind of like concentrated to like one little area. I never really had to go outside of it, so it was easy for me. Like I basically, Streetlight Manifesto had like a big room on the 10th floor of a warehouse, kind of like not far from Staples Center in downtown LA.
Right.
And then because the main guy, singer, songwriter, and Streetlight, Thomas, lived in Southern California. He then moved to Northern California around the time I moved back down to Southern California, because he had the studio there. And as well as like he had an office and like silk screening stuff, like a whole operation, really the band's kind of whole operation, which was all self-sufficient and pretty crazy unto itself. But yeah. So that whole situation was going there. And we just, over the course of those, like, I guess I was in LA just over a year, right around a year, we rented 2 different houses that basically like myself and Thomas, when he was in town, would basically live there. One of the places, a good friend of ours is artist Dave Clock, who does a ton of like real crazy concert posters, drawings, and silk screening stuff. We kind of all lived in this like, Filthy Phil's house. Don't want to get into that, dude. Filthy Phil is crazy, but we rented his house from him.
That's wild.
Yeah. And oh, Jesus. But yeah, so kind of lived in a couple houses out there. And so like I didn't really pay rent. It was all part of me like working on stuff. So it was kind of like it was pretty chill for me, honestly, living out there. It wasn't, but I just wasn't super into LA. It's just, I don't know. I was much more into the Bay Area, and so kind of like decided, it came down like, hey, I want to get out of here. I'm either gonna move back to the Bay Area or I guess not New Orleans just naturally. And like my mom kind of had like a small heart, like a minor heart attack around the time, so kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the impetus of how I wound up back in New Orleans.
Okay.
And so, yeah, basically just came back to New Orleans, started doing corporate work, had some studio gear and a little bit of experience at that point because I'd worked on the Streetlight Manifesto record. I'd also at that time worked on like Wilhelm Scream Records, which is a band during all this like the beginning of like Wilhelm Scream. Like I toured with them pretty nonstop from like 2007 to 2012, 2013, and then still sporadically up until, haven't really done anything with them in the last year or so, year and a half. Basically, haven't done really anything with them since COVID. So I guess it's been a couple years now, but it feels all weird. It feels like it's like a much shorter time, but So basically, and so I did that for a bunch of years. I mean, went all over the world with those dudes. Lucky enough, like got to go to Europe.
What was your favorite place in Europe?
In Europe?
Yeah.
Greece.
Greece?
Greece is the best.
Really?
I mean, I have lots of great friends in all kind of places, and don't want to like start any like
no.
any ish, but Yeah, definitely. Like I always like Greece. Weather again.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
They put big old blocks of feta cheese on everything. And just our experiences there were great. Like, all the shows I've ever done. I went there with Streetlight Manifesto. I've been there with Zebrahead. I've been there with Wilhelm Scream. It was it's been always awesome.
Yeah.
Always awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, it's such a break from the normal. Because I've been lucky. I've done like couple dozen European tours over the years.
That's awesome, man.
And it's like, it gets to the point to where like I could care less if I ever go back to like Germany or the UK, really. And I don't mind them. And see, the thing is, I haven't been in years now, and I said that for years because I was going like 4 or 5 times a year for years.
Right.
Now I'd probably be totally into doing it again. I guess I don't know. It's just
Man, look, I totally feel you. I mean, I never stepped like outside of Frankfurt, Germany's airport, but having
lovely airport though, with the little espresso machines in the concourse everywhere.
Yeah, that's nice, fine and dandy if you have a reasonable layover. But I told this to some close friends of mine because I just came back from Portugal like 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
and with the last year, my wife and I, we got married in Copenhagen, and when we flew into Copenhagen via Frankfurt, Germany, and that terminal is just one long ass stretch of building. So it's
like the New Orleans Convention Center,
pretty much. But the thing is that you fly into one side. Let's call it you're flying into Gate Z or Gate A, and you have to catch a flight normally. In the other side of the fucking terminal,
right.
And you got like maybe if you have like an hour and 45-minute layover, guess what? That turns into 15 minutes because you gotta fucking hightail it, like a good mile and a half.
Especially if you have to clear customs or something like
exactly.
that. Who knows? Like
yes.
I dealt with tour managing bands doing that. I've dealt with that for years and years. It's some wild stuff.
Yeah.
For sure. Travels. I mean, and now I couldn't imagine doing it now. Also, like I couldn't imagine because I travel a lot with doing the corporate work still. I do a fair amount of shows every year. The traveling I do with that is just like travel's gotten so rough.
Yeah,
everything
security
gets so much worse.
Security is so much more heightened.
Yeah. You see, and I never toured like pre 9/11. I hear that was the wild, wild west.
I bet, dude.
That's what I hear. It's but like so I never really traveled much before that. For sure. Yeah, I was like 20, 21 when that happened. 2021, something like that. But so it's like I'm kind of. I miss touring a bunch, obviously, because it's like once it becomes like part of something you really do, it's like hard to like not want to do it. But at the same time, it's like sleeping, and even in the nicest situations, usually it's like at least for what kind of music I'd be doing, is you're in a bus, and that's great and awesome. Yeah. But still, like sleeping in a bus messes me up pretty bad. Like at the end of it, my back is all messed up.
I'm sure.
I have hip problems just naturally. Like I just have a bad, like genetically bad hip.
Yeah.
And so, it definitely took its toll, and especially, and it's when I was even younger, it's kind of crazy, I kind of just dealt with it, because it's kind of crazy, with Wilhelm Scream, and with, tour with a lot of the punk bands I toured with, we slept on floors a lot.
Yeah.
Or whatever kind of, weird camping contraption we had that week, of, the thinnest padding that was nice to sleep on kind of thing, but still, at the end of the day, it's I couldn't. Yeah, it just messed me up too much, or just sleeping in the van all the time, and
Yeah, I've never been in an actual band before. Nothing really professional or anything like that. And I was fortunate enough, like I was telling you before we started, that I went on this Florida run tour with Goatwhore.
Yeah.
And I could definitely relate. Once you go on tour, you do miss it. You miss some aspects of it. I mean, the guys who do it professionally, they're so used to that grind.
Right.
And before I went on it, they were like, dude, you sure you want to do this? I was like, man, yeah, absolutely. I want to go drive for y'all, and it's going to be great. Because I'm used to moving. I was in the military for 16 years.
Right.
And in the oil field, in addition to that.
Right.
So it's I'm so used to the hurry up and wait of loading in gear and waiting for sound check, stuff like that. But dude, it's when I got back, it's there was kind of like an adrenaline kind of just kind kind of like just it left me, and I was like, dude, like, what's going on?
It's yeah, it's wild. It's wild because and even like it's funny because like now it's like I would love to go back on the road a bunch, but it's like that stuff, like the hurry up and wait. Like what really messes me up is stuff like because especially of the last 5 or so years, 6 years, where the studio is really busy. I'm busy.
Yeah.
There's never not projects going on.
Yeah.
That I'm recording, mixing, working on, doing whatever in whatever phase they are. And so what would suck is it'd be like, okay, I finished these mixes, and everyone's like, okay, they're good. Okay, I'm going on tour. And then they hit me. I go, hey, actually, there's 2 things that we want to do where I would like to, I want to make these revisions. And it's like, well, you got to wait. I'm not going to be home for 4 weeks. Okay. And especially for a couple of years, I was mixing, I was mixing analog. I had to be in the studio to finish mixes for the most part. Especially what I had on the Master 2 bus stuff because I couldn't commit that. I could commit the snare compressor. I could commit things like that to tracks and just record them in, but I couldn't do it to the master bus if I was going to change it later. Yeah. Without going through a whole process of things around it. Right. So so that was just a hindrance. So I would end up going on tour, or doing corporate shows, or doing whatever, and not be home for a month and a half. And then when I get home, it's like, oh, I've got 7 projects now that are backed up that I thought were all done that everyone's decided they want a little changes on. Mm-hmm. And so it's I've kind of changed my workflow now to where I painstakingly went through and found, for the most part, plug-in replacements for the analog stuff I was doing. Some of it it's still some of it I still like. A lot of times when I mix things, I'll get tracks from people and I'll re-record it through what my recording chains would have been. Right. To kind of just give the track initially what I would want, I guess. Uh-huh. But yeah, so anyway, just going through all that stuff kind of made traveling a pain. So I'm trying to travel less or travel in chunks and kind of but I still probably work 80 to 100 days a year doing corporate audio.
Oh, okay.
Which isn't much. It's not a ton.
No, it doesn't sound like a whole lot.
Not at all. But it's definitely but it's also the studio is also a full-time job.
Talking maybe 2 months out the year or something like that. Maybe,
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah, 3 months of and it's usually in chunks of anywhere from the shortest shows for me are usually a week. Some of them are as long as 2 to 3 weeks sometimes. Just kind of depends, And that's just and most of that nowadays is me managing crews. It's not even really.
Yeah, because you're at that point now in your career where you could dictate what's going to happen with certain...
it's just I think what it is it's just with the people that I've been working with and kind of where my corporate path has gone realistically is because luckily I don't need to do it. I can make enough money from working here and doing some live shows here and there and all that. I can make enough money to pay my bills for sure. But with the corporate thing, it's some of my best friends do that all the time. And usually when I go out and do it, the main company I work with and the crew of people I usually work with are more they're most it's fun usually more times than not. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to hang out with my friends and we're going to be working. Yeah. For these 10 these 10 hours every day, but then I get to hang out with all my friends.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we got a job to do.
And that's totally 100% how most of that has gone for me over the last how many ever years. Was it just friends from back pre-Katrina working at Freeman who now are still doing it, and because they're 20 years later, 18 years later into their career, they're a lot of those guys have those positions where they can hire people or and luckily I've stayed with the gear and the know-how enough to kind of stay in that world. Yeah. And I guess I'm a decent with people. I don't know. They put me in charge of crews, so they must think something. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
You gotta have definitely gotta have the right, personality and character to manage people, and in addition to getting the shit done.
Yeah, I guess so. It's and like I said, for the most part, it's and I also it's funny because I go on those shows and it's the people I'm working with are a lot of them work a ton. They work as much as I do, but they're doing the corporate thing all the time, traveling nonstop. And a lot of them are just oh, God, this is my 45th day on the road. This is terrible. And I'm coming in I haven't worked in a month and a half. I'm out here for 14 days. It's going to be great. Yeah. I love Las Vegas. Love San Francisco.
No shit, dude.
Because it's and then luckily I've also, a lot of the work I've had in corporate world, I go back to the West Coast a lot, which is also great for me. I wound up, especially a couple years before COVID, was out in the West Coast 7, 8, 9 times a year doing corporate stuff. It slowed down a lot. Now it's kind of picking back up a little bit, but gonna try to weather the storm because I don't want to work as much as I have in the last a couple years before COVID. I was working 310 days a year, probably.
Damn.
You know?
But like now, you're back in New Orleans.
And
like so, on the strength of recording out west, and you come back home, who is probably like the band that pretty much separated your name from other producers and recording engineers in the city? I mean,
it has to be Thou. I mean,
Thou?
I was doing that when I was in Oakland.
Okay.
And it was like, you know, they were like the first band I really worked with that like got quote unquote signed. I mean, it was, you know, Southern Lord. I don't know how signed you want to call that, but it's
still
signed.
signed.
A contract. They put the record out, so I guess whatever, you don't know.
Exactly.
You know, no, it's not like they made tons of money. Like, oh yeah, like, you know, like suddenly it was like hot tubs and strippers or nothing. But like, you know, it's, you know, it was like, but yeah, totally. It's like, oh, like, you know, we're making a record we know is gonna come out
right
on this, like, on a much larger platform than the previous ones.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have probably that, you know,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, you know, but I mean, also doing Wilhelm Scream records. I mean, like, Wilhelm Scream is a pretty big, like, international punk band.
Yeah.
You know, and I've done their last 2 full lengths and EPs. So, like, everything they've done since, like, 2014, I've been involved in engineering of some sort, you know, and then also co-produced this last one that came out last year. Last year. And so, you know, I would have to be somewhere in there, you know. I mean, I don't know, but definitely the majority of work that I get is probably based on a lot of, like, Thou stuff and then a bit of also Pairs.
Pairs, yeah.
Pairs is another one that, like, I have to look at the timeline. I don't know exactly, but they're like their first record, Go to Prison, we did in the original. It wasn't Hightower, but the original spot I had here in Fontainebleau, which was just in the normal practice spaces, 7006. I was there for like 3 years, maybe almost 4 years.
Yeah.
And it was just literally a little one-room facility, had a ton of gear just stuffed in there. You know, just recorded bands live. I still record bands live, I guess, but like then it was like, you know, they were like all the amps were shoved into that back bathroom closet. If you're ever been a Fontainebleau practicer, you know what I'm talking about. This weird like bathroom back there that's all chopped up to just be storage. Shove amps back there, close the little door I installed there.
I've actually been fortunate to watch a couple of witch burial practices over here, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. And so, you know, and basically just like, you know, just recorded bands there, you know, and then, you know, luckily had some bands, start charging bands, started acquiring more gear, was doing a lot more live work locally then, because I was doing some corporate work, but really knew I didn't want to ever get fully back into that, like completely, because it can, if you allow it, it can take over your life, and you will work 300 days a year. You'll make tons of money and be stoked about the money you've got in your bank account, but it's like, but
are you happy?
It's tiring. You probably are kind of happy with all the money you got, but it's like kind of tiring.
Yeah, I'm pretty exhausted and shit.
Yeah, you know, it's that just, I knew I don't ever want to go back into that fully. Right. I always want that in my back pocket because it's awesome. Because I mean, I can go do a corporate show and they pay me definitely more than I make in the studio, and I can come back to the studio and buy some, you know, just ridiculous piece of gear I have no business owning. You know, because hey, I want to see if 2 EQs are really better.
Right,
you know,
right.
Throw $5,000 at this stupid EQ.
And I'm looking around your control room here, man. It's like, you know, some of this stuff. I mean, I know you're used to it. But it's like, I'm looking at that right there. I guess it's a power conditioner on top, that Furman?
The Furman, yeah.
Yeah, power. So, and below that, what's the rest of that? Like,
so that's basically all mic preamps.
Mic preamps, okay.
Yeah, so that's like, it's a 16 space rack with 2, 6, 16, 20, 24, with like 27 mic preamps in it.
Wow.
Of varying degrees, textures, companies. I don't know. It's kind of like what I've developed over the years. Because also, luckily, with being able to do a lot of this, and the other thing that like doing the corporate thing has allowed me is to like be able to like try gear out. Yeah. Like it's you know, and again, like shout out to like I have a metal band with my friend Mark. Been around the music scene in New Orleans forever, but he and I both have like this like weird gear lust thing where we feel, oh, it's totally fine if I buy this thing, sell it, and I lost $200, but I had it for 2 months, and I know I do or don't like it. Yeah, like I've always felt like it's worth it. Let me try this. You know. And so I've really kind of like a lot of the gear in here really has been like sort of custom, and I've go through a lot of gear. I buy a lot of stuff and sell it again because, hey, you know, a couple years ago everyone was waiting to dual rectifiers again, so I went and found like the old, you know, the you know, holy grail dual rectifier page. Yeah. You know, found one in Ponchatoula, went out there and got it. And had it, and just I never liked it. I mean, it's fine though, totally fine, great amp, totally great amp. But like, just I have a Bogner Ubershaw, which I feel does that thing but better.
Right.
And so it's like but I know now.
Yeah.
I know 100% because I had one. It's funny, back in the Ghostwood days, I bought one too, way back in the day, and had one for years. And
I don't think I ever asked you, but like when you spoke about being in a band,
yeah.
What was the instrument that you played?
Oh, bass.
Bass. Okay.
Always played bass, except for very early on, like high school days, I played, or like I guess early college days, I played guitar in a band called the Picks, which later became like, I don't know, some other She's Dead and kind of people that are in Anarchy versus the World and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I also was a singer in a band called Self Serve for maybe a month. Other than that,
maybe a month.
Played bass and sang. Yeah. It was a very short-lived thing, if I remember correctly. That's pretty much it. Other than that, played bass pretty much in all the bands I've been in. Yeah.
I'm really curious. Like you've like I guess punk hardcore was kind of like always your niche.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, definitely once of my like becoming aware of music and like actually. I don't even know if to say actively, because like early on I was way into music, but it was all pop, R&B and pop. Like,
really,
I was like way into like I remember my first and then it's all kind of blurry timelines.
No.
But like I remember like the first 3 things I remember really owning and listening, or I guess 4 things now that I think about it, were like I had like Super Bowl Shuffle by the Chicago Bears, Michael Jackson's like Thriller or Bad or one of those.
I'm with you on that.
I had a Debbie Gibson.
My wife would love you right now.
In Your Eyes or whatever that was. and then I had George Michael. I remember having George Michael at some point, like the Faith. No, not Wham.
Not Wham.
Like gotta have faith. Right. So like for some reason, those are like the early things I remember having on cassette and like listening to.
Yeah.
For some reason, and then like got way into pretty much listen to like hip hop, R&B. And stuff along those lines for the most part as like a child. And then, sometime around like, I guess probably around like middle school, kind of got more into rock and, and I guess punk and stuff more like, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Realistically. And then it was pretty much like exclusively fast stuff.
Okay.
Like, 'cause I remember like being from New Orleans, obviously like the slow sludge things like prevalent here.
Really?
I remember hating it. Like, I just, as a kid, just not being into it. Like, oh, why is it so slow?
It's not fast enough.
Yeah. Why? What are you guys doing? This is so slow. And then, like, and again, full circle moment, thinking about like, being able to record High on Fire. The first, like, slow song I remember hearing was, like, a bunch of our friends hung out at, like, Dixie Tavern. I'm, like, 17 probably at this time.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe 16, probably 17, maybe 18. But we used to hang out at Dixie Tavern. That was, like, our place, kind of like the couple of friends and bands that we were with and stuff, and that's where we hung out. And I remember the 10,000 Years coming on.
Yeah.
And just be like, what is that? Yeah. That's a slow riff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that was like, then that opened up the whole, like, okay, maybe I am into some of this stuff.
Right.
And then, kind of like from there, sort of like, that's what kind of opened up my real, like, heavy. Because also, at the time, also, like, wasn't in, especially into, like, thrash metal or nothing. Wasn't into metal. It's like punk hardcore. That's I'd say punk hardcore kid.
Yeah.
Not really into metal. Definitely aware of it. Had friends who were in, like, Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, Sepultura, or whatever, and I'm totally cool with that. Totally fine with that stuff.
Right.
Just never went home and put it on.
Yeah.
And then, like, was way into, like, grunge, I guess, at some point, Nirvana, and that was a whole thing that I was way into Sonic Youth. I mean, probably my 2 favorite bands of all time, probably, like, Sonic Youth and The Cure.
Dude, that's
probably.
I love those 2 bands.
Definitely, if you look at what I listen to the most over the course of like my, I would say, sentient music life. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but basically, I mean that's kind of it,
So how does a person? I mean, I probably know how it, but people who are interested and curious, like I myself, how does a person whose favorite 2 bands are Sonic Youth and The Cure go on to record a said I Hate God?
I don't know. Probably those dudes are into some of those bands too. I'm
sure they are.
I don't know. I mean, it's like, for me, because also at the end of the day, I will say this. At the end of the day, the things that I enjoy chasing the tone of is still heavy stuff.
Okay.
Like, for whatever reason, and I would love to, like, work on a Cure record or, like, Sonic Youth record. I mean, that neither of those will ever happen, I'm sure. Who knows?
Never say never.
That'd be crazy. But you know, so like thinking about things like that. But like, I would love to do those records, but I know that like my experience and what I've done, definitely the like. You know, what I have the most experience in is mostly seeking heavy tones or like kind of making what I want to. I think like I thought hyper realism is always what I've thought about of like what I want like my records to kind of sound like. I want everything to sound like I want my drums to still sound like drums. Like you hear records and it's like just that's just samples, man. Like I can tell. I can just tell.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like that some of those records sound good in some genres. That just is the way it should be almost, you know, maybe. But at the end of the day, I want to try to make your drum set without using samples or the utmost lightest amount of like sample like augmentation to just like I want it to sound like your drums. I want it to be like when you hear your record, it sounds like you are behind your drums, you're behind your drum set and it feels like but bigger.
Right.
And the guitars sound like I'm in front of my amps but bigger. That's kind of like what I'm going that's what I find I lean towards, I guess maybe is the way to put it.
I'm really interested in knowing who are some of the recording engineers or producers that you actually look up to? You know, like, first names that pop up in your head.
Early things. I guess I would go back to like early on things I'd noticed was like things like, you know, I remember hearing like Nirvana's In Utero and be like, why does this sound different?
Like Butch Vig.
You know, that's Steve Albini on that one.
Okay, yeah.
Nevermind is Butch Vig. Yeah. But also like, but I remember that was the first time like hearing and being like, yeah, why do the drums sound like? It sounds like when I hear them on headphones. And I remember like being in my room as a kid, listening to them on my headphones in the stereo, like laying on the floor in the bed or wherever.
Yeah.
And like being, it feels like I'm in the room with these drums.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I remember being like, what is that?
Yeah.
I mean, is this guy just playing a different kind of drum set I've never heard before? You know, you really kind of don't have any,
he had
reference.
I'll watch the little YouTube clip on Steve Albini, in particular for In Utero. He had mics everywhere.
Oh yeah. I mean,
like all around that room. Not just in front of the drum heads, it's just like every corner.
You know, and I've worked out in this studio. I've kind of worked out some weird workarounds to be able to have like good drum room mic stuff. It's kind of weird. Like I use a spare bathroom. That's like it's creepy in there. It's more light now, so it's not as creepy. But it's like just basically when the guy moved out of this place. Basically, so the studio is essentially like for people who don't know, it's like a 2,800 square foot, I guess, roughly, maybe 3,000 square foot.
It's a converted hotel, right?
Yeah, so it's an old hotel where now a bunch of bands practicing, and I've got essentially what was like one of the suites.
Yeah.
And essentially, I guess if you wanted to like put into it, like it's like a big apartment.
Yeah.
I don't live here at all. But like it's just the studio, and it's essentially that's 1, 2, 3, essentially like a three bedroom, 2 bath apartment.
It definitely feels cozy.
Where
I'm sitting.
Yeah, definitely. I try to keep, and that's the other thing is I working in bigger studios and and smaller studios. I've always liked the vibe of like the studio where like you go and it feels like you're almost just like hanging out at your friend's house.
Yeah.
Or just some dude's living room, and like you're just there just happens to be enough awesome gear here to make your record sound, awesome. 90% as good as you could do in the majority of commercial studios. Mm-hmm. And it's not just gear; it's also there is like a lot of little weird things that have been done to the room to like make it work. And so, but yeah, that's kind of like the vibe I was going for or wanted to go for.
Yeah.
I
think you captured it, man.
Okay, awesome.
I really, because like, I definitely feel like I could just hang out here for hours on end and be like, okay, man, okay.
Man, I do. That's probably why. I mean, like, literally, like my most days, my girlfriend, she's a teacher, so she wakes up at like 6:30 in the morning. So like,
God bless her.
With the dogs moving around, and it's like pretty much once I'm up, I can't really go back to sleep usually. So I'm usually getting here by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes as early as 7:30. Yeah. And I just work. I like to work during the days. I've become a morning person.
Yeah.
And so, but I just, and a lot of times I'll just be here till, usually at least till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I'm trying to do better with that. I'm trying to like have some days where like, okay, this can wait till tomorrow, and I'm going to go home right now and just like, let me go watch some, just some like completely like,
Strike me as a man who's very task driven, and like once you're on something, you got to see it through.
Yeah, I guess I find, especially with like working on music stuff, the recording of bands isn't so, pretty much that's if it's happening, I can get into it. Uh-huh. I find with mixing, I have to kind of be into it. But when I get into it, I can just sit in the chair for 12 hours, not realize I haven't, use the bathroom. I haven't drank anything, haven't eaten anything in 12, 13, 14 hours. But I'm totally into it and don't realize till the moment I go, okay, I'm kind of tired. I should stop. Oh, it's late. And I go, oh, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, man, I'm thirsty. I'm hungry.
Give your ears a break.
Yeah. Well, and I do a lot of that. Like, I will say, luckily, with the way this place works is I can, like, a lot of times when I'm mixing, a lot of it is just, okay, I feel like I'm almost there. Let me just and I just loop the song 4 or 5 times. And I have, like, speakers out in the live room, and I can just pump it to everywhere. And I kind of walk between rooms. I can go and, like, kind of, like, hang out in the balcony for a minute while it plays through. I can kind of still hear it out there.
That's neat.
So it's, like, so there's a lot of that when I'm mixing. A lot of, like, you know, where I feel like I'm, like, at a point where maybe this is real close to being done. Let me just let it play. Because I find if it just plays, if I loop it 4 or 5 times, there's always, like, something where, like, and that one section, the hi-hat's, like, kind of weird and bright. Let me go look at that. You know, there's always going to be something. Mm-hmm. So, like, there's a lot of, so, like, you know, that's kind of how I can, when I work that long, that's kind of how that works. You know? When I'm tracking a band, like recording guitars, like, after 5 hours, I'm fried. We're just doing loud, distorted guitars, and, you know, after, you know, and trying to really concentrate on how well it's being played. That's rough. It's you know.
Have you ever been put in a situation with a band that, you know, they contract you out, and you feel like from the initial standpoint, it's like, I don't know if this is gonna be a good fit. I don't know if me and this band is gonna mesh well. You ever into that?
I mean, I don't know so much. I mean, it definitely has happened. Not too often though, I guess. And it's more, and it's rarely has it been like personality meshing, as far as I'm aware, unless people hate me and I don't know. But it's been more so on that front. Has been more like aesthetics of what the music is or isn't.
Okay.
And then there's 2 sides of that. There's, like, you know, where literally if you show up here with your gear and everything, I put mics in front of it and I make sure everything sounds, I listen to what your gear sounds like when you play it.
Yeah.
And I come in here and I try to approximate as best I can the mics and everything to doing that. A lot of people have in their head they sound kind of different than they do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes for better or for worse. It's really could be all over the place. It's not really like I think of, like, you know, condemnation. Yeah. It's just like sort of for better or for worse. Some bands, you know, and so it's like that. I've had that happen. A lot of times I record a band, it's like, oh, this band's tight. They sound awesome, and I give them, you know, big sound, and it just naturally sounds big. I just turn the faders up, and it sounds like a big, fierce band. Yeah. And they're like, we kind of want it to be all distorted and just kind of like, I want to hear like all cymbals and not a whole bunch of kick drum. And
yeah, it sounds like
it's you know, and it's cool, and there's a whole aesthetic to that, and that's totally awesome. Like, I even listen to records that sound like that. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, I'm not the dude to come to make those records, I don't think, you know?
Yeah.
At least not, I mean, you know, at least not to, a lot of times bands will also do it where we just kind of record, and also a lot of times, you know, people aren't super experienced, which is also part of it, and don't realize that, like, you know, part of, like, when I'm recording here, pretty much what the tone is that's hopefully pretty much what's going to end up like on the record. Yeah. And hopefully that, and the best light possible, like, you know, but that's, you know, but a lot of times people record and go, oh yeah, it sounds fine. And then, like, oh, the guitar, I really want it to sound like this. Yeah. And it's something completely different than what you record. Or with drums, like, oh, I want this snare drum to sound like this. And they send me a record, and it's like, oh, well, we recorded a snare drum that's tuned up full octave higher than this. Like, there's just, you know, I mean, I could totally sample replace it and figure something out maybe, but, like, you know, there's some like, you know, there has to be some thought process to that when you're tracking. And I think a lot of people also don't get that, because a lot of people just track, like, who are recording now, just DIs. And it's just programmed drums, and you can just change everything after the fact and do everything, you know, whereas I do very little of that. I mean, I record DIs because it helps me mostly with, like, you know, with editing and stuff, with mixing and stuff. And but still, at the end of the day, I'm 98% of the time using just the microphones I threw in the cabinet. Sometimes I'll reamp, like there's been, you know, in some bands that's part of the process also. It's just like, we're going to record all the stuff with amps, but we know at the end, like BRAT, we're probably going to reamp all of their guitars because we've done what is going to be this next record over the course of like 4 or 5 distinct sessions over a course of a couple months. Okay. And so to have it be a cohesive sound, we have all the DIs, and we're probably going to reamp them all through a cohesive amp system once we figure out that last recording session. You know, probably, and that's not 100%. We may go with everything being a little different. Yeah. But I know that's like thought process, you know, and so that's kind of like, you know, how that works out, I guess.
I'm really interested in knowing that who are some of your favorite bands that you worked with? Like if
My
they're like
favorite,
they hit a chord, they hit a note, and you're like, fuck.
oh man,
Like these.
Sometimes it's not even like, I mean, like, you know, like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, early on, I mean, again, it comes back to like Thou. Early on, like, I remember like really digging in with Wilhelm Scream about tuning on a record. Like one of the dudes, I don't know if I'd call it perfect pitch, but the dude hears everything and it's wild. Shit. He's not, he's a Mike Sapine, a shout out. He's helped me work on some of the Pairs records and some other stuff. He's come down here and helped us, like, you know, drum editing and engineering and stuff. And but yeah, like going through like I remember working on like EP with him where just like we went down this rabbit hole of crazy tuning and how guitars are never in tune if you're playing chords and all this crazy stuff that like normal people can never hear, but there's this like 0.1% of people who are like, oh yeah, that's that. Oh, it sounds terrible. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about, man? And I'm talking about on that record, there's a couple parts where it's like, oh, every time this chord gets hit, it's out of tune. Yeah. And if we tune the chord, then the rest of it feels out of tune. So we would punch in just that chord everywhere on the song with its own tuning where the dude would hold the chord and we'd tune it. Wow. And then just put it in there, you know. That happened I think once, maybe twice. But it's like, so, because it bothered the dude. He could hear that something wasn't right, and he wasn't wrong when you go to a microscopic thing. And some people can hear, like, to that degree. So, like, I think, like, that got me, and then coming back and then, like, working on a ton of bands that were tuning, you know, especially when I first moved back to New Orleans, everyone was tuned to, like, A, F, you know, C standard, drop D, but a full octave down, stuff like that, and most of them sound out of tune because it is. It just unless you're playing Feather, and it's one of the things that Thou somehow with Andy, Matthew, and Mitch playing together now for like 20 years, you know, or almost between other bands before Thou and stuff, and you know, at least 15 years at least I would say at this point. They have this uncanny ability to be tuned in with each other. Yeah. Where they're playing these super, super low tuned things and they're so well in tune. It's uncanny almost. And that's what I've noticed a lot of the like really, really good super low tuned bands are. The biggest thing is they find ways to be in tune with each other. Yeah. Yeah. You know. I noticed out on the road too, like naming the Gohor, and like, man, like it's one thing that Sammy's like all about is just like being in tune. Oh, and it makes all the difference. Oh, yeah. You know, like the Evertune bridge. Like one of the things I want to give for the studio is this Evertune bridge that basically makes everything completely in tune. Yeah. Like, you know, it's like every chord, it's just like, because what it does is it works, every string works on its own tension. So that no matter what, it's in tune. You can't bend strings. I mean, you can, but you can set up to where you can't. Right. And so just chording is just perfectly in tune. Only issue with it, of course, like everything great in the world, you got to give up something. It really sucks up all the attack of the guitar. Yeah. Like all the like really initial like kinky, especially if you're trying to do thrashy stuff. If you're trying to do like pinch harmonics and shit like that. Honestly, I don't know, but that's I don't want to comment on that because I don't know. I've never tried that. I'm just curious because but that's one of the things. So like you know recording with an Evertune, it's like, oh man, these sound so big because the two rhythm guitars are so in tune. This is awesome. But then at the end of the day, when you get into some like riffs, we did this on this last Wilhelm record because we had a couple Evertunes out for that up in the studio. We did that in Massachusetts. Trevor Riley from Wilhelm Scream has built like his own like really nice studio up in Anchor Inn Studios up in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Okay. And going up there and going between guitars and just being like, oh man, everything's got like a hardtail bridge, just like, or even a Floyd, but just not an Evertune that like stays perfectly tuned. Yeah. Just has a little bit more attack always. Yeah. Always, and it's like you know. And so you know, it's one of those things where like you know. So yeah, getting in tune with that, noticing that. So I guess there's a band like Thou. Like Thou's just, I feel like when they hit notes, it sounds like Pairs. Was like a band that like literally they came to make Go to Prison their first like full length record in my old studio, and then we were gonna like spend like a day making it. And I was like, yo man, these songs are real good. Let's spend 2 days making it. You know, I think I think we did the whole record in 2 or 3 days or something like that. But I mean, also like you know, but they came in, they were super tight. All the songs were dead on. Brian Pretis is a beast of a guitar player. You know, everyone they had, you know, in the band, John Bourgeois, the drummer at the time, you know, everyone in that band at the time, Zach, and Alex. Yeah, couldn't, yeah, just like, so basically they were like they were on fire. It was like awesome. It was like just them playing the live tracks, and it was in the old studio, so I'm just in headphones with them in the whole room. And I'm just like, oh man, this sounds really good. And at the time, I'd been touring with like Wilhelm Scream and like working with Comeback Kid a little bit, toured with Madball, sound for them for a minute. and a slew of other like random one-off bands and stuff I go on a tour or two with, and just like, yeah, man, you're like, you guys are better than most of these bands that like are opening for the bands I'm working for,
yeah,
or you're infinitely better than most of the local openers I'm seeing everywhere. Like, yeah, you should put like a little time. Like, we should try to like really make this into something, sort of, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how Go to Prison. You know, we literally spent the extra day on it, basically, I guess. But you know, but it was like, you know, they were a band that like really like, you know, I knew as soon as they played like the first song, I was like, oh, we should put some like effort into this, not just like the, you know, because when it was the old studios, a lot of it was just like the demo. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't have a bunch of gear. It was literally just like, hey, mic's mic, put a mic in each front of each cabin. All right, guys, I'm rolling, go.
Go.
All right, yeah, and we're rolling. You know, it's like, so basically that's how that was going for years, you know, and that was like one of the first things there that I really, really, like, we kind of like, let's try to make this, you know, something.
Yeah.
And I've done it with other things as well before that, but like that was something, you know, and I think like kind of like really, who else? I mean, High on Fire.
Yeah. It escapes me, but which album did you record?
Bat Salad is like basically I think it might be the last thing they came out with now. I don't really know. So I did a couple of songs. Basically, I did drums. They were supposed to come down and record all of it, but that was around the time Matt Pike had like toe issues.
Oh,
or something
yes,
like that.
that's right. That's right.
And so he couldn't travel. So he couldn't travel down to do it, and then so they had to cancel the tour around it or something. I think was starting here.
Yeah.
Because they were practicing down the hall for a couple of years because their drummer lives in New Orleans.
Des.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. It was crazy. I remember like just getting a call like, hey man, this is. Oh no, it was Paul Webb. Paul Webb was like, hey man, I gave Jeff Matz from High on Fire your phone number.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. All right, that seems crazy. And sure enough, you know, calls me and is like, oh yeah, we want to come do, you know, we're doing like this EP, or like it was like it
was some covers,
an EP and some covers, basically, yeah. And so called me up and just like, yeah, and so I got to, you know, and I also wound up being like Dez's last like recording with him, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And you know, and so like that was pretty cool. That was fucking awesome.
They did that cover of "In the Crypts of Rays."
Right, yeah. We did a couple. Yeah, we did. I think there's 3 songs on that record, and I think we did 1 or 2 other songs that wound up being on like compilation things. I think like we did like a Thin Lizzy song.
Shit, fucking sounded killer.
As far as I know, all that I did is just the drums.
Was the drums?
I know we recorded like a bass and a guitar track as well. I don't know if they made it or doubt if they made it to the record. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's totally like, you know, it's awesome. But yeah, it's totally having Dez, you know. Again, dude, I remember like came in and plays, and like after the first take, it was just like dripping sweat, and just like putting 130% into every take. That was like eye opening because I'd not seen a ton of that before. You know, where dudes are really like hitting every drum as hard as they can every single time,
as hard as they can, as fast as you can.
Right, you know, it was like, you know, I remember like, you know, at that point I'd record a lot of bands in here, and it was like, oh man, these drums are fucking loud. You know, like, you know, I mean, I recorded a lot of bands, and it was like, you know, but yeah, totally, you know, so it's like, but yeah, it's hard to put it on like one band specifically, or how, you know, bands that have been in here or whatever, you know, I'm sure there's a million I'm forgetting that I probably like better than some of the ones I'm mentioning, who knows, but like.
I make it a habit on my podcast to ask everyone that comes on, like, what are the 6 essential albums that they can't live without. Oh, but I'm not gonna do that with you because you're a special case. You're a producer, recording engineer, and so what I want to know is what are 6 albums that you actually worked on that just stands out.
Okay, this will be hard. And I'm probably gonna get it wrong because I'm probably gonna think.
There's no wrong answer.
No, tomorrow I'm gonna think of all the right ones. Trust me. Okay, so I guess. Okay, I guess okay, I mean, it's just Thou Summit.
Okay.
First time we'd do it would be for Southern Lord.
Okay.
Actually had like a budget that wasn't like, oh, we can get like $1,000. It was like, yeah, okay, we actually have a budget. We can book a studio. We can take some time with it. You know, we booked a full week. I'd never worked on a record for a full week up to that point. That it was like a record I was doing.
Right.
You know, I'd assisted on some, but never like my own records worked on. It's like, oh, this is crazy. I got a whole week. Mm-hmm. And it wound up being that like, and it's crazy because that's when the Saints won the Super Bowl.
Oh, no shit.
The last day of our recording was that Sunday.
That's
Super Bowl
fucking
Sunday.
awesome.
So Andy and I, and it was like the record had been done for like a day, and we were just like working on it. We were putting like rain sticks and like you know, this little like cardboard thing with the spring, doing shit like that, and synthesizers on the record, just because like, oh, there's an extra track on this one. Let's see if it's cool. And we watched the first half of the Super Bowl. And I was like, oh fuck, I think they're gonna win. This is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, my sister's having a party like down the street from where the studio was, like maybe a couple miles. So we went to my sister's house. They won it, and then Andy and I went down to the quarter and just like, it was crazy. It was like, so that's like a really memorable like overall thing.
Yeah.
You know, so doing that record, what other ones? I mean, obviously doing EYEHATEGOD.
Yeah.
Kind of like being able to like, you know, have like a legendary New Orleans band in here. Doing like the Thou Emma Ruth Rundle and the Thou Mizmor, like the collab records were real cool. Because again, those are records you got to spend a lot of time on and really like dig deep into, I think, you know, spend a decent amount of time.
That is one artist that I truly respect is Emma Ruth Rundle, because I got into her whenever Red Sparrows.
Okay, yeah.
I love the stuff that was all instrumental and whatnot. It just, man, that music just takes you to another place, kind of hypnotic at times.
Yeah,
and then like, you know, I followed her with Marriages, and then from Marriages she got the self releases.
Right, totally.
And she's really a great songwriter.
It was crazy. It was awesome watching that process, because like that, and similar to the Mizmor process where Thou did the collab records, both of those, basically Emma and Liam Mizmor came down for I'm not sure, between 3 and 5, maybe 6 times each for a couple days. And what they would do is they would basically, Thou has a practice space literally on the same floor down the hall.
Okay.
So they would practice down there during the days, take an hour or two for dinner, come back here, and I'd hear all the demos like the day they'd write them.
Right.
So they'd like come in here and record what they had kind of written that day, to have demos of everything, so Brian could like kind of flush out vocals and just so they could hear what it sounded like when it's recorded. So I got to hear like the whole thing kind of progress. Yeah. And that was pretty awesome. So I guess I'd have to put that there.
Okay.
Doing special interest records, which is just like pretty cool, because it was like sort of it's just completely different than everything else I do. I mean, as far as like just like, you know, it's a drum machine, but of course we don't just record the drum machine, put it through a bass amp and a guitar amp, and have kind of like, you know, to try to make it something, you know, little, you know, try to make something cool with it, you know. Right. So that those are always fun records. Let's see, I guess Pear's Green Star, another record. You know, it's funny because I think about this and what it really it's the records that had budgets, so that we could spend a lot of time. Because I mean, a lot of the records I make, it's like, you know, I mean, if you don't have the budget, what are you gonna do? Like, you can only, you know, it's like I can only work for so cheap. Especially because I mean, there's overhead here. You know, there's like still an overhead.
Yeah, you gotta pay rent. You gotta pay utilities.
I gotta pay rent and bills, and it's, you know, it's like, and I got rent I got real rent or mortgage. You know, like it's, you know. There's
no free lunches here, goddamn it.
You know, so but it's like, you know, and so I don't know, you know, so it's like it realistically that's what a lot of kind of unfortunately comes down to, is a lot of time what makes the most memorable and what I feel a lot of times the best records are just time. Yeah, being able to just get into a headspace where I'm working on Band-Aid Brigade record, which is Zach Quinn from Pear's I don't know, piano rock band. I'm not sure exactly how you'd categorize it. Probably talk to them about that, but you know, like that was awesome. Like they just came into town because most of the dudes in the band are from San Diego. Okay, they came into town and just were here for 3 weeks, and we were every day for 3 weeks worked on the record, and that was awesome. It was, you know, because you can get so much deeper into it than when a band's going to come in and it's like, you know, we got to finish tonight. Like we got to finish all the music today. We'll do all the vocals tomorrow. Yeah, and that's, you can totally make a great record that way. But like my engineer / producer / mixer hat can only be so. I can only exercise it so much. Right, maybe is the best way to put it. Right. Until the mixing stage. And then the mixing stage, again, if the band is trying to make things within a budget, I can't spend a day a song on it. You know? Which is where I would like to be. Like, I know my best mixes come from when I get to spend a full day on a song. Because it's like, you know, you just, you think of and exhaust every possibility, or you can. And I mean, a lot of people mix songs in days and days, like multiple days on a single song. And that's probably more in the pop realm and, you know, large budget productions. But like, at the same time, it's, you know, I feel like if I can just go into the studio today and all I have to have done by 6 p.m. today when I want to go eat dinner is a song mixed, along with just like the general headspace and just the just basically being able to I work on it and not look at time.
Yeah.
And that's really how it works. Whereas a lot of times, like, okay, I know this band really kind of only wants to spend this much money on the mix or this much money on the whole project or whatever. So I kind of mix with that in mind. I'm not going to sit there and, try to see what quarter note delays feel like on every other line just to see if it's cool somewhere.
Right.
Whereas if I'm spending a whole day on a song, I might do that and go find the 2 or 3 that are worth keeping. Stuff like that, it's little things like that, at the end of the day, how much, do they sell more records? I doubt it.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it's, but I have a feeling it's again, trying to show the artist in the most, I heard someone say this once, marketable light. I don't know if that's necessarily how it is, because I'm in kind of a punk and metal genre that's just generally not trying to be super marketable.
Exactly.
At least that's the wink thing.
Yeah.
It's all very marketable, but we're not supposed to think of it like that. But totally, I feel like I'm trying to I want more people. Like, I feel good knowing people listen to my records, and I want to make records that hopefully more people. I want to have my records in as many ear holes, as they say, as possible.
Yeah.
That's just sort of like. Yeah, I don't know. So it's kind of like what I want. Like I got to the point where I make records pretty much for a living, or a significant portion of my living, at the very least. And I just want to have the most records in the most people's ears.
I was about to ask you a question, but I think you kind of answered it with the previous question I asked. Is like, what's the secret to nailing a really good mix? And you said, you mentioned time. You mentioned time.
It's time. At least in mine. There's probably some people, but then again, you can't spend too much time. Like, if I spent a week on a mix, I doubt if it'd be any better than it was at the day 2.
Right.
Probably be different. Yeah. But doubt if it'd be any better. Because that again, that's the thing. It's like, all right, when is it done? I can sit here forever and make little tweaks. I can go and make every hi-hat the exact right volume for each hi-hat hit all 184 times in this verse. But, it's like, that's not going to help. Maybe it will, but it's not going to, make this record do better. Chances are it's not going to make anyone in the band feel that much better about what was going on in the record. It's something I'll notice only because I noticed what it was before.
Right.
And only because of that. A lot of this stuff it's relative, to reference. So it's like sort of, if you've never heard what the fucked up version sounds like, it's, it's going to be fine no matter what. It's going to be fine no matter
what. So, any straight up metal bands you're currently involved with right now, like recording, working with?
BRAT.
Okay.
Right now we're working on, I don't know what to say, if I'm not supposed to say, but definitely working on a collection of songs that will go on a record.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at my hard drive. It's been a lot of ska.
Really?
It's kind of crazy for me. I guess it's not that crazy, but yeah, I've been doing a Bad Operation mix. That's what I've been working on the last few days.
Bad password.
Always. The best way is usually look at Dropbox. That's all of it, because the hard drive's really I'm sorry. So currently, let's see. I have to look at the dates modified. So right now, I've been Utex. Just finished their full length. Literally,
my boy Sam White. That's my boy.
Waiting on revisions from them, but other than that, I think it's all pretty good. What else? I just finished a record last night with the band called the No Shows.
Okay.
Ska rock. I don't know what they want.
I saw a flyer for them. I saw
rock, ska rock. I don't know what you want to call it.
I think they're playing soon if they didn't play already.
Probably so. They did play a lot around. I just did a mix of one of the things that's kind of out of my general wheelhouse, but I love working on is getting like R&B stuff. A band called Sweet Funk. My man Lenny Green.
Okay.
They play around town. They played Maple Leaf I think last weekend. But I'm doing that. I just finished a Joystick EP. Let's see what else. I can't mention that.
No, don't mention that.
I just finished a record with Special Meat. I'm gonna start mixing that in a week or two. What else here? Let's see. Just finished a record with Bad Misters as well. I don't know how much of this I'm supposed to say. I don't know how much
No. I mean,
but yeah. So just finished a record with the Unnaturals. I'm gonna start mixing that soon.
I guess what I was most curious about, James, is like
ongoing Thou projects. I mean, there's always with Brian. Brian comes into the studio usually at least once a month to just work on things.
Yeah.
And who knows what those things may or may not become. Some of them become songs, some of them don't. It's just us trying to figure things out sometimes and just do things. But that's kind of been going on for like 2 years now.
Yeah. You ever have like an intern of your own come in and help you out?
Intern, no, not necessarily an intern. I did have for a while Nick Pope, who's in band Fruit Machines and local sound guy. I think works at like Gasa Gasa and stuff, and a couple other places. But he was kind of like doing engineering with me. I wouldn't like necessarily call him like an intern. Definitely like engineering, assistant engineering, maybe at first a little bit, but been engineering all in his own right. He was kind of working here for a while. Still does every now and again when I kind of like, a lot of times I like book some stuff that I just don't have time for. Like I'll be out of town, but a band wants to come in and they're willing to work with someone, not with me. Because I think a lot of times when people come here, they want to work with me. And that's kind of what I found a lot of times. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to, hell yeah, come to Hightower, and they think they're gonna work with me, and then someone else here. I mean, Nick's awesome engineer; he's just as good as I am.
Right.
But like totally, there's definitely been an expectation there. But yeah, when bands are willing to, and I'm out of town, they want to come in. He still comes in a couple times a year and still engineers projects for me. Yeah, that's he's pretty much the only one really. Other than that, I've tried a couple things a few times. It's never really worked out, just timing wise, and it's also hard because it's like, it takes a lot of time. Yeah. I think a lot of people aren't, I don't know, people just don't seem to have the same kind of time they maybe used to. People don't want to just come and work for free. And I don't want people to work for free. Like, I don't know if I'd even want that. But at the same time, like, I would feel like in order to have someone replace me, I'd have to like train them for quite the time to feel comfortable with it, I think. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good way of answering.
No, I'm just curious,
And also this is like, this is not like a business endeavor. This is just something that kind of grown into it's grown to way too much shit in this place. And like, I've thought about that. Like, if I have to move, like, I couldn't move out of here in a day or two.
Oh, hell no. You got way too much gear.
Where I'm going to put the 8 4x12s I've got. Like, I don't even play guitar. I can, but I don't. It's like I would strum the acoustic around here sometimes when I'm bored, but like, I don't really even play anymore.
Oh, shit, man. You got me fucking convinced that you do play guitar, because, I'm just looking at the wall of freaking pedals.
100 pedals here, literally. Like,
and amps.
Like 60, 70 pedals or something that we're at now. I sold a bunch at one point, but like, yeah, it was up to like 100 pedals at some point where I just like did an inventory, and it probably still is, because like if you count like a lot of the high gear that Izzy and Craig have, it's just in the studio as well. They're a band that practices in the back room in the studio. If you can count their gear, between them, they have 5, 6 basses and 10 guitars here, and all nice stuff, like not like just like throwaway, like all vintage Fender, like Craig's mostly Fender guy. I have a bunch of Fenders here that you can play if you're playing standard tuning or drop D or something relative easy to it. That I don't have to like, throw it all out of whack to get into tune.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a lot. Over the years, I've just bought a lot of stuff, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Getting to some technical questions here. What is probably the easiest tuning for you to like just like lay a track down and just work with it?
Oh, I don't know if that matters.
It don't matters?
As long as you're in tune.
Okay.
Just be in tune.
All right.
It's so hard. And have a guitar that can be in tune.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it's like intonation, like especially when you're that low, a lot of guitars just can't do it right.
Yeah.
So no matter what you do to set this guitar up, this particular guitar will never feel good tuned that low when you go above the 5th fret. It just never will.
Yeah.
It may be totally acceptable, but it will never feel as good as one that is correct.
What piece of gear you can't live without? As far as
like
recording and mixing, yeah.
Oh, like one piece?
I
can't do anything with one piece.
Okay, give me three. Give me 3.
So I guess. Shit, man. My 3 favorite things in the studio.
Like your babies, something you got.
The Wagner Uberschall.
Okay.
It's just the monster of an amp. It's crazy. It was my first like real like boutique high gain amp, and it was like, oh shit, this is why this costs so much more than all the other stuff I've played.
Yeah.
One of the few, like, oh damn, nasty, sorry.
It's okay. That's good ASMR.
Yeah. And so so that's one piece of gear. This is so hard. My monitors, my Focal Trio 6 BE monitors. They're the first time I really spent like these monitors like new cost about what my car costs when I bought it used. So fuck, you know. And I never regretted it at all. That's the craziest thing. I never regretted
No regrets.
No regrets at all. And then the other thing, which, you know what, maybe my GNL bass.
Okay.
I have an old GNL bass that I bought when I played in my first band, Ginger Quail. I was like 17, worked at A&P Supermarket all summer long to pay for it. Bought it from New Orleans Music Exchange up when it used to be on Magazine in Louisiana. And that bass, I played that one. I liked that one. Bought it. Had it for years. Caught fire once.
Oh, shit.
Which, I mean, roasted it. That's what everyone does the guitars nowadays anyway. So
Yeah.
I'm just fucking ahead of my time, DIY roasting. But basically cooked over a furnace kind of thing.
God damn.
Over New Year's night. And melted the case and stuff. And then pickup melted kind of out of it and stuff. But so basically had that bass. And then I have now probably used that bass on probably 200 records. It's the best sounding P bass I've ever had in the studio. And usually the best sounding bass, period, unless you're looking for something completely different sounding. I don't know why. It's been on all the Pairs records. Pretty much anything I've done that's in standard tuning or drop D that the band is willing to try a bass, that's the one that never doesn't make it.
Right.
It's all over the Band-Aid Brigade record that we did, where that one we had enough time to where we literally tried different basses on different songs. I was like, oh, no, that one's just better. I think it's on every song except 2 out of like 14 or 15 songs. So that has to be the third thing. And only because that's been with me. That's the thing I've had the longest.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've had anything else. I don't think I've not had it. That's the longest piece of gear I've had. The oldest piece of gear I've had by far. And it just still gets used regularly. So I have to put that probably just because of its.
Before I leave you here, what are, besides some of the bands you mentioned, what are some bands in your opinion that people need to get excited for in coming out of New Orleans?
Out of New Orleans, out of
Louisiana.
Okay,
period.
so I mean, BRAT without a doubt has been like kind of the thing.
Yeah,
seems to be sparking a lot of interest, and I'm super stoked I get to be involved with that.
They are highly talented.
Yeah,
I love those guys.
No,
and girl, woman,
and they came in talented and like from the get go, and have only gotten better because they all are like realize that this is a cool opportunity that they're getting, and like have really worked. Like Liz's vocals, if the new one's gonna be crazy. She's worked on it a ton, and you can tell. You know, like Brenner, you could tell, been working on his tone and been like, you know, getting his chops up and like really trying to like, you know, everything's getting elevated. You know,
that's awesome.
Hennessy's kicking ass. It's always sounding good. You know, and just like and Dustin, obviously, like we just literally just tracked drums 3 days ago for a couple songs, and I mean, he's just getting better and better, and like, you know, watching. And it's also cool because they're like kind of a band. They come in, their demos are pretty much done.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, their demos sound like most bands'
recordings
a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's like, it's pretty awesome. So it's like, I mean, as far as the production goes, I don't know how much I have to do with writing or production. I'm zero, actually. But like, you know, getting the tones there and like knowing, like, you know, just it's awesome. They're one of the bands. Trying to think what other bands that I've been working with. Utex seems to be like getting a lot of like, you know, love everywhere, and their new record is going to be a big step up from the last stuff people have heard. Special Meat is just awesome because they're just like, I don't know, purveyors of meat. I don't know how else. It's just they're awesome. I don't know. Yeah, it's, you know. Who else? I mean, everyone knows the other people. You know, that's the reality of it. Trying to think who else. I hate, and I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but there's like Gorgeous.
Another Sam White.
I don't know.
And Rob project.
We recorded. We have they have like a 8 or 10 minute like improv thing we did in the studio that I assume is going to come out at some point or something. I don't know what their plan is with that. We did that. Gnashing. Another band I recorded. It's awesome. Stuff sounds awesome. We're going to do vocals later on this month to finish that up.
Oh, that's awesome. Shout out to Chris.
Yeah, Chris, my man. But yeah, I don't know. Just, you know, I don't know. It's so there's so much stuff. It's hard, and all the ska stuff. I mean, right now, like Bad Operation Joystick. I know this isn't the podcast for that. Probably, I don't know. Maybe some people like some ska riffs.
You know, it's not Tales from the Extreme Metal. It's Tales from the Riff, and you know, so I have an open mind.
but you know, but I mean, but definitely, you know, that stuff is, you know, doing real well. Yeah, I don't know. Those are the bands I'm working with, and the unfortunate thing is I'm so busy. I really, there's a lot of bands I wish I knew more about.
Yeah.
But I rarely have nights off to go out to shows and stuff anymore. I've been doing a little more over the last couple months, but like, it's hard to get out there. I'd love to go out there. I want to start going to more shows, but we'll see what happens. It's just like hard, you know. I'm literally. It's hard for me to go out and do that when I know I've got like, oh, there's 4 records that need to be mixed right now, and then people are just waiting on them, you know.
Uh-huh. Well, man, James, thank you so much, man, for letting me come over here
man.
to the studio.
Thank you.
And your work speaks for itself. You know,
Thank you.
You know, in my opinion, and a lot of bands,
crazy to hear.
A lot of the bands that come to you trust you in your capable hands and ears to get a certain tone, certain sound, and it's like it's really evident why they come here. So, man, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
And
awesome.
dude. Anything you want to promote right now? Anything you want to?
Nah, I don't know. Not. I mean, at the studio. You want to come record at the studio?
There you go.
You're like a badass band. You want to come make some cool records? Come record. I guess hit me up on like Instagram, or I guess I have an email, but I wasn't checking that for a while. Kind of forgot about it. Lost some bands that way. Like literally, like didn't check it for like a year, and then went back. It's like, oh shit! Like 7 people hit me up. Were like really trying to like make records and all, and like some people like I wanted to work with too.
No shit.
I think it sucks. But yeah, no, it's just unfortunately, I get busy to where kind of. But yeah, hit me up Instagram, email. I'm easy to find, I think, if you're looking for me. But yeah, you want to come record a record? Come record a record at Hightower.
Once I get my chops up, I definitely will.
Oh yeah, we'll make you some. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, me and Chris.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I should have said that.
Now it's already happening.
Now it's already out there. All right, my brother. Well, man, thank you so much. Thanks for letting me be here again. And dude, I'm super stoked because no one told me in like 3.5, 4 years of me playing guitar that I'd become such a gearhead and curious how the recording process works, and being over here, man, it's kind of like a dream come true. I really like no shit, man.
Thank you, man. That really that means a lot to me. That's awesome.
And man, I'm Mo. This is James Whitten from Hightower Recording, and we are out.